All right, I know there's way more important questions about God, but seriously, it seems like when someone releases gas, that it could have been a real quick fix as far as making sure it just wasn't smelly. It's awful in elevators, and your spouse is gassy. It's a whole mess. There could have been some sort of air built in, like air freshener, easily just a really good smelling organ around those parts of your body. You do have to give God some credit on our brains are connected to farts in a way that just makes us laugh. I don't even want to laugh, honestly, because sometimes I just think that people are just being gross and letting something out like that, and they want everybody to laugh. I don't want to laugh. I just can't help it. It's just, what is it about that noise? There's something in our brain that God put in there, okay? Some of you are like, well, that's not me. I don't think it's funny. Well, obviously there's an exception. God also made some people that can't see accidentally, on purpose. Whatever your theology is, that's on you. There's exceptions to everything. Knock it off. But there are more important questions. I wanted to make one last call for the Bear Group experience. We are gathering a total of 7 people, including myself, and we're going through a 4-week, 1 hour and a half each week, basically a small group on steroids for 4 weeks. I hesitate to use the word curriculum because it's more discussion oriented. There is a rhyme and reason and direction that we are headed towards. In these discussions, it's with the intent of backing off of systematic theology or just our dependency on it, our assurance of inerrancy and some of the problems that seems to have caused. But it's not just a beat up conservative theology. It's mainly a let's just take a bird's eye view at everything. I will say that most people who end up in these groups are typically struggling with questions that we look at pretty intently. Reach out to me. My contact is in the show notes. Last minute. This actually is outside of the Bear With community that is a gathering of patrons of this podcast. Some people actually in the Bear With community consider it their primary community, i.e., church. We are actually going to within this community, we're starting a deconstruction book club, and we are kicking it off with A Case for Christ by the famous Lee Strobel. Looking forward to we're kicking it off in September, and I haven't read that book in such a long time, but looking forward to reading it outside of my fundamentalist systematic theology glasses. Want to give a shout out to Paul Canarins, my homeboy from middle and high school, bald all the time together. It's great to have you as a listener, and Carissa Rowe, Robbie's sister-in-law, Elizabeth Madison, Robbie's wife. Fam, I miss everybody. All right, here's Robbie and Matt to talk a little bit about the Seacoast podcast, and then you'll get to hear from Kevin Sweeney on how a hallucinogenic trip, did I say that right? Hallucinogenic trip caused him to go to God. Man, that would not fly in my churches that I grew up in. It just would not fly at all. All right, so you just led chapel. Was it primarily Houston Texan players, or were there...
It was the Houston Texan players, and we had a couple coaches, a few staff members. Actually, Pastor Brendan Brown spoke today from Hillsong, San Francisco. It was awesome. This is our second chapel of the season. Last week we had our first one. It's just really been off to a really good start. Just like great community, great vibe, great worship. The speakers have been awesome.
That's cool, man. Well, I'm going to give you most of the credit. All those people that you named, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Robbie was there. Robbie was there.
I appreciate it.
Are you looking forward to the start of the football year?
Actually, really excited. Really excited. It was getting into the rhythm. I think I'm realizing it took me a minute to realize, like, oh, we're here. Like, there's a game every week. And of course, we've got a lot of services throughout the week. Off season is great. Planning is great. seeing the guys like and face to face, and them wanting to dive in and them wanting to be there and all that, it makes it real, and so it kind of honestly settles a lot of my anxiety about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. And so I know I mess with you a lot, but I'm not making fun of you here. You know me, I'm obsessed with football. Like I'm just football,
right.
football. You
Yeah.
not being that big of a fan, is it still electrifying on the sidelines? Like an NFL Sunday game.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I have learned how to watch the game.
Right.
So to me, this is going to sound really crazy, but I see it almost like in production eyes. So I see about like the intentionality of giving everybody an experience. So from the way that they enter to like the merch table or the mascot and all the tricks that the mascot's doing throughout, or like giveaways, the national anthem. There's just so much that happens in one game. It just really, when I first started going, it was blowing my mind, and I really appreciate that intentionality. And then, of course, the actual game.
Can you guys catch me up? What is Robbie doing with the NFL? I'm so confused.
He's the starting quarterback of the Houston Texans.
No.
I'm actually a running back.
Yeah, he's worship leader and running back of the Houston Texans.
I'm backup running back.
No, Robbie, let me see if I can trace this. Correctly, and I'm sure I'm missing some steps. So you and a really good buddy, he was chaplain of South Carolina Gamecock. Basically, he brought you in on some of that stuff as a worship leader, and then it went from there to the New England Patriots, and then from there to the Houston Texans.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. Like, I mean, I've always done church ministry and of course majored in music and stuff like that, and then we actually went to undergrad together, and we co-led the FCA together at undergrad. So that was at Newberry College. That doesn't get a lot of good media attention, so here we go. Shout out to Newberry.
Heck yeah.
And then, just years later, we've always partnered. We have a nonprofit called The Greatest Champion. That's a sport foundation that is always focused on pouring into athletes, and he has an incredible preaching gift and an incredible pastoring gift as well. So he would always preach, and I would handle any musical or production elements. So yeah, we went to USC for a while, and then players went pro, and he actually was with the Chiefs for a little bit, and then he was with the Patriots, and then the Patriots were interested in incorporating worship, so they started flying me up. So I was doing that for about 4.5 years, and then,
in a private jet, right? Every now and then, private jet.
Yeah, every now and then. Yeah, that was incredible, honestly. Yeah, I had a tough part about getting back on a Sunday morning, so their solution was a private jet one time. But I think it's my 4th or 5th season with the Texans, or second season full time. Moved out to Houston a little over a year ago to develop the actual chapel program. So we oversee lots of gatherings throughout each week.
Well, that's
heck yeah,
kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's
that's
awesome.
Neat.
So I thought it would be really interesting to get both of your perspectives on the new Seacoast podcast that is actually out now. Robbie, you know me more than most, and you have seen me. You and I have kind of been shoulder to shoulder with podcasting in this world, and then you and I worked at Seacoast together way longer. And then Matt, you and I are newer friends and have gotten to know each other a good bit. You've never been connected with me in the evangelical world, and here you are doing a lot with me with Pastor with No Answers. And y'all both heard the Seacoast podcast episode. I'm curious, Matt, you know me behind the scenes. Is it weird to hear me in that, what was arena? Is it weird to hear me in that arena?
It's like
is that not the word I'm looking for?
Maybe just space, because arena is like mega church. It's like,
Well, that's what it is, though.
Are you used to hearing me in that Coliseum?
I think it's interesting.
I'm curious, Matt.
You sound totally different. Like you sound like a pastor, which is a little weird, which you always do, but you sound like you're in the uniform, I guess. Is that a good way to put it? That's all I can really explain. The thing that was weird is I don't know the person that you were talking to. I've never heard of him, but I looked him up. And he's got like 500,000 followers, which is wild on something. I didn't know anything about it. So I was lacking a lot of context, which will always be the problem.
Hello, Brandon.
In circles.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Brandon.
Oh, okay.
Now, is it and you and I are close enough to you be a straight shooter? Does it feel off-putting?
No. It's I don't know that a lot of people in my shoes would listen, but I think a lot of people in Christian shoes would definitely listen. It's not a podcast for godless heathens.
Right. Here's what this feels like for me. I obviously have no idea what the future has for Joey Svensson just in general. I enjoy what I'm doing. Most importantly, I enjoy the season I'm in with kids and their age and all of that. I feel the uniqueness of my connection to a church called Seacoast Church, which, Robbie, I want to let you speak on Seacoast a little bit because I'm so complimentary of that church here, and that would be your church as well. This direction makes so much sense because they're two worlds that I do feel very much so a part of. For me, I don't really see them as two totally separate worlds. And I think it's because I don't mean to say this in like a pat myself on the back, but I really do feel like a pastor. Like, as far as when I say pastor, I mean more of a shepherd. Like, I think a lot of people, when they hear pastor, they think of somebody on a stage like teaching. And that's not what I think of. I think of people that are shepherds at heart. That's kind of the angle that I'm at. I just kind of love everybody. I see a lot of people who are on a similar journey as myself, with like having a lot of questions and maybe changing a lot with how I see things. I don't feel necessarily like I'm leaving a family behind either. And I don't necessarily think that would be possible at other churches, which Josh, our pastor, jokes around about that. Like, this setup just couldn't happen anywhere. But you're a fellow, I mean, you would consider yourself a fellow Seacoaster. That's your fam too. Am I a little too complimentary to them on this podcast? You listen to this podcast, you hear me talk about Seacoast all the time.
Well, first of all, before I respond, I would just say the way you just put on your glasses there made you look so much older just now.
Even how I put them on?
You looked like a grandpa.
Heck yeah.
That's hilarious. I would say, first of all, yes, I love Seacoast. My story and intersection with Seacoast, obviously, is pretty unique. Like, they planted a church in my hometown. They intersect in really real times of my life instead of just being like a service that I attended. I remember when my family was going through something really heavy in high school, and one of the pastors there, he's not there anymore, Todd Phelps, he literally prayed with me every single week until my situation changed. To me, kind of beats a lot of the heartbeat of Seacoast for those who were like actually connected on the inside of it, plugged into small groups and stuff like that. I think their experience of Seacoast is a little different than somebody who either doesn't go there or I was so interested by Matt's comment that you sound really different in that podcast. I didn't necessarily hear that. I also know you in that space. So I didn't hear the difference there. And I do believe that it's cohesive. I think that the way that you have kind of carried yourself has, I think Lisa described you as a bridge, and that's what it felt like to me. One of the things that would always annoy me the most when I was leading worship in Argentina is when they would ask me to sing worship in English. And I'm like, why would I sing worship in English? Just so you can like listen to me singing? Like, you're not participating. Like, I'm adamant about like, we're going to sing in Spanish so we can all do this together. And that's what I felt like on the Seacoast podcast, is that you didn't go at it in the same kind of banter that you would on Pastor with No Answers, because that would just completely shut doors down. But you walked at the pace that they were and shepherded along, and it still felt like the same Joey vibe to me, facilitating that conversation.
I agree with both of y'all. And I think maybe what Matt hears is the fact that in that context, even though I am a part of this organization, I'm as far as the podcast is concerned, I'm also representing something that doesn't necessarily belong to me. This is something that I'm a part of, whereas Pastor with No Answers is something that I started alongside like what I would say are close people in my life. Seacoast, I see it more as, I'm not necessarily saying, hey, come into my kitchen as we share some beer and just talk about any and everything. It's almost more like, and the jump probably doesn't make complete sense, but it's almost like, hey, come into my grandma's house, who I love very much. We kind of see things a little bit differently. So I talk a little bit differently here. You're not going to hear me joke how I joke around. It's my grandma. I love my grandma, and that kind of doesn't fly around here. But it is interesting because it is kind of it's a different world, and it's a different audience. I think what I like too, it's a different challenge because the purpose of the Seacoast podcast is not for me to unpack and process and get all of my questions and doubts out on the table for discussion. That's not the point. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I just feel so connected to both worlds. I kind of feel like the same, Joey, but that makes sense that I would come across a little bit differently.
I totally agree about you being a bridge, because I've tried to do the same thing in my life, and I think you're really a good example of that, in that you're able to kind of bring people from different walks and have them, at the very least, have a conversation and see their similarities and differences. All you're really trying to do, I think.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good avenue for more and more of that for you, the opportunity for ministry for you to do what you're skilled at.
And I'm curious, Matt, when you hear me dialogue with people that you don't know, but two of them apparently I'm very close to, and one of them being our lead pastors, what's your very surface level impression of an evangelical megachurch, given that you've quote unquote deconstructed all the way out? There's a lot of things that bother you that bother me, but you hear me talk very highly of Seacoast, and then you kind of get a snapshot of me conversing with the lead pastor. Do you think, I don't know why Joey's hyping it up so much, but they seem all right. They seem all right with me.
I struggle with the thought that you hype it up a lot, because I'm very skeptical about any large organization. That is a very large organization from what you've described. So, I mean, I'm always going to be very skeptical of those things. I'm going to assume behind closed doors something bad has been swept under the rug, because it just happens. It's happening everywhere. So, I mean, my assumption will always be prima facie not great. I also hope that you experience a genuine connection there, and that the people there are genuine, and it's not just a scheme for money and all those things. But that is how people like myself will unfortunately have to view it, because those are the examples we've seen for centuries.
And just for our listeners' sake, the purpose of this episode is not to validate anything. Honestly, I think with Seacoast, for me, I wore those cynicism glasses for years while I was even there. And so I don't even think I don't take those glasses off, but I think over time for me, if I would have seen, because Robbie, you and I have had discussions on the side of things that we're frustrated with the years that we've been there. I think we've both kind of gotten to the point where it's like, okay, there's no place that's perfect. Big picture. Yep. This place does way more good. Robbie, you may have been, because I've told this story a few times, but I was telling Brandon Lake that seeing him grow up as a kid, there was one point where I asked somebody, and it may have been you, Robbie. I think I may have asked you or somebody. I was like, how big is Brandon Lake now? Like, I don't understand his popularity. I know he's has some success, and whoever it was, it may have been you. You're like maybe one of the bigger Christian artists out there right now. And I was like, oh my gosh. So from an outsider's perspective, was that like me interviewing David Crowder, Kirk Franklin? Like we're talking that level, right? Because I still can't.
Absolutely. I know.
So crazy.
Absolutely. Honestly, I would put Brandon on, he probably wouldn't say this, but I definitely would put him on a level like a David Crowder. You've kind of got your writers, you know how it is, like you've got like some trusted writers that you're like, I know that their songs are going to be solid. I know that I could probably use them at my church. For me, I always think about the musicality of it as well. And one thing that Brandon has always done well, he not only kept the song relatable, but he brought some musicality out of it. So for someone like me, who was a performer and not just trying to like do the formula, the musical arrangement of a worship song, I was able to bring some musicality out of it. So I think he kind of crosses over those bridges. And so that being said, the fact that he's that gifted of a songwriter and a performer, his performances are very electric as well. So it's resonated with the world. But granted, the platform is different now than it was when David Crowder and all of them were getting started. And David, I think, had a lot to do with the passion conferences and things like that.
Now, how do you, I'll ask you similarly to what I asked him in this episode, how do you process the genuine practice of worship through arts and the business and the marketing of it? But you would say you have a heart of worship, and obviously that's a outside of outreach of some sort, that's what you want to do with your life. And so you have an authentic drive to not only worship through arts. I can understand the cynicism, like I was picking at Brandon, there's a lot of artists that they're bringing in millions of dollars and they're like, well, it's all for the Lord. And I'm like, well, maybe it is, but at least be happy tell people that you're also making some good money. How do you process that?
I think that we have a lot of taboos on things when it comes to somebody's career. Obviously, I'm around people that have a lot of money every single day over here, way more money than any of us have. And I could
not Brandon, but
no, I'm talking about
I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I mean, the athletes, but I watch people judge them all the time, all day, every day, for doing what a lot of other people are doing, playing football. And the same thing, so one thing that I've wrestled with a lot as being a worship leader is the fact that people don't think that worship leaders should be successful professionally. I view it differently because I feel like I am a worshipful artist. So I don't only sing worship music. Obviously, I do jazz and classical rock, all of that. When I'm worship leading, it's a different mindset to me than when I'm producing a song that I just want somebody to relate to. And it's just a different mindset. When I'm worship leading, I'm trying to get people to sing more than I'm singing. Essentially, that's my goal. So I'm not doing all the same stuff I would sing if I'm singing a Bruno Mars song. There is a dichotomy in the mindset. I think that the heart has to be pure. But then on the other side of a professional person, if you really think about it, I've got a family that I've got to support. So my goal as an artist, not as a worship leader, as an artist, is to allow my music to be at the place where I can sustain myself and my family. It really does, the same kind of business things do apply, but you want to make sure that your heart stays the same. Now, for somebody who makes a lot of money from it, that is not really in their control unless they're abusing the system, which some people abuse the system. And that's where it gets tainted in the music industry. Brandon does not do that. Brandon has been, as you know, he's been the same person this whole time, the same crazy, kid. It's the same Brandon the adult, but he's just grown in his skill and he's grown in the amount of people that have resonated with his music. Now, what bothers me is, for example, if you go to Nashville, it's oversaturated with maybe Christian artists that say, hey, a Christian song needs to have these elements. A verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, a bridge, a chorus. It needs to sound like this, it needs to be repeatable, you need to rhyme with this and all of that. And that's when you get to that section where you're really almost kind of manipulating people because you're finding patterns that you think is going to produce a lot of money. And there's a lot of artists that that's their focus. That's what I have a problem with, not authentic artists that have grown an audience.
Knowing Brandon from the angle that I know him in has been a huge lesson for me because I know how I would naturally have viewed Brandon if he was just a name and an artist that I was not connected to in any way. I would have the natural inclination to make up things about him in my mind and make assumptions. This is somebody that I would judge a whole lot and who I have. And yet I actually know this person. And, I say he's real deal. What I mean by that is pretty much what you see. You see more of what he is than what he is not when you're around him. And I think that's saying a lot more than what you could say about a lot of people in his shoes. This episode that people are going to hear right here on Pastor with No Answers is extremely interesting for me. It's a pastor who says that he found his way back to God through a hallucinogenic trip. What I find very interesting about this is he no longer has anything anything to do with hallucinogens. So I know a lot of people who talk about the spiritual practice of hallucinogens. This guy says, I had one trip. It pointed me to God. And when he says God, he means the God of the Bible, Jesus. And so since it made it so clear to me, there's no need for the hallucinogens. That it already pointed me to what I need. I have what I need. And so I don't do the trips anymore. A real side note of the conversation, I'm going to ask what you guys think. I'll ask it in a more random, cryptic way. But if I was on here, let's say the three of us, we have a guest, and the guest we don't know that well, and he's trying to pronounce an Indian name, like someone from India, not a Native American. So really, really crazy pronunciation. And then your knucklehead friend Joey says, ha ha, it sounds like you were speaking in tongues, man. Ha 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 ha. And then we move on with the conversation. Did I make you guys uncomfortable by saying that?
That joke? Like, would that make you
uncomfortable?
Not me.
How about you, Matt?
No. I don't think so.
I wouldn't say uncomfortable. I would say like it probably like rubbed me a little bit just because, well, you know how I am.
Yeah, would it be something that would be strong enough for you to circle back around and say, hey, just from a friend to a friend, that may have come across a little bit weird?
Probably.
No, that's cool.
So the issue was the guy had an accent. Okay,
but just because
so y'all haven't heard this yet, but this guy that I interviewed with, he was trying to pronounce someone that he admired who had an Indian name, and so I made a joke and I said, basically, sounds like you were speaking in tongues. He emails me a couple of days later, and basically I couldn't speak higher enough on his behalf of how he handled it, and I really want to talk about it because I really do feel it's such a exemplary thing to point at it, how I think we should deal with this stuff. But he emailed me. He said he didn't really like how I did that. He said it just kind of comes across a little off-putting, to white American guys talking, and then I was saying an Indian name and you made fun of it. And my immediate response was, I think you're right, and I'm sorry. And I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. That is not in any way, look at Joey and how humble he is. I really appreciate the fact that he was probably irritated. He actually said he didn't know what to do right on the spot. And he circled back later and told me his thoughts. And it was a great conversation. I felt like I learned from it, and we're all good.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, like, so names are a big thing, right? So especially if you come from a different culture and then come into the context of America, people that have non-American names or something that seems almost really what the issue is that as American English speakers, we have a lot of trouble pronouncing other language, but we see it in a different way. So we can't pronounce it, so it sounds funny to us. To them, it's like they can't pronounce my name and they're making me feel dumb about it.
Right.
But I know that's not you, but that's kind of like just thinking like American versus like another culture coming in, they're already uncomfortable. Like, you know, my wife talks about a friend of hers that she was in dental school with, who was like brilliant, top of the class. But her accent was so strong, she was Vietnamese. Her accent was so strong that her teachers would basically talk down to her and act like she wasn't intelligent when really she was at the top of the class. That's why I say, like, it's kind of a bigger thing, but then also, it technically was tongues. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
That was another tongue. Hey, Matt, I would say that you are going to be so shocked about this, but given that you live in the deep South too, you probably won't be shocked, but you'll get a kick out of this. So Robbie and I, most of the time that we worked together, our office was housed inside of basically an American bar restaurant. They had live music. The owners were really good friends of the church. And this guy, sweet man, but oh my gosh, so oblivious. So Robbie, who everybody loves, including this man, would walk in the morning and Matt, this guy, I'll say probably 60s, would say, "Hey man, how are you today, man?"
every day.
And every day. Robbie, did you finally tell him, please don't do that?
Oh, I've told him multiple times.
Okay.
I love him. I don't mind it as much, but it would be like when he had like a business associate and he was in a meeting, introduce me like he would say that to somebody that doesn't know me. That's when it would really bother me. So I said, hey, please don't introduce me like that, you know. So for multiple reasons, but yes. I do. I love them though.
Matt, his daughter may or not be a regular on this show. We'll leave it there. I'll ask Liz if I can hear that. Hey, so it's Kevin Sweeney, right? Sweeney, how to say it?
Yes.
So I'm very excited about this episode, and it's one of those episodes where I am the least prepared, because here's why. There's so many things I want to talk about with you. Like just when somebody reached out to me, I barely scratched the surface. I was like, yes, I want to talk to this guy. We're going to run out of time before we run out of things to talk about. And I want to break the ice by saying, Kevin, I haven't read the book. I podcast a lot, and I've got 4 kids, so I just can't keep up with all the books, but I hope that's okay, because I'm super excited about the conversation. Gonna have a
I feel like there's enough in the title alone.
Yes.
Already. Just go for it.
Yes. So here's what I'm going to do. I always like to try to think of a little fun way to start off. I'm going to try. I know some people hate this sort of context, but I actually like it. And I think because this is a podcast where we talk about a lot of spiritual stuff, for me, the context is important, where someone is at somewhat. I've asked people, I've tried to not say, are you a Christian? Because that's so loaded, but I still kind of want to know where you're at spiritually. But I was like, if I'm going to put you on that hot seat, I need to do the same for you. So I'm going to try to give you a snapshot and keep it under a minute. You think I can do that? You think I can do that?
Absolutely.
So here we go. Catholic and Pentecostal, I was scared of hell my whole childhood. Add OCD and depression. Unfortunately, religion made it all worse. I'm not cutting down Catholics and Pentecostals. The environments I grew up in really jacked me up big time. I started deconstructing church, I'll just say it this way, church bullshit a long time ago. I was in college and kind of cynical. They were supposed to be cynical, and just saw a lot of stuff. I still valued the church, but I was like, wait a second, this just isn't lining up. But I don't think I really started changing significantly in my theology until I started with 2 other friends, a podcast called Bad Christian. And we were so evangelical and so fundamentalist. Here's where the ball dropped for me, was talking to a guy named Chris Date. It blew up my world because he was an inerrantist. Like, he was Calvinist, but he believed people were annihilated. Nobody burns in hell forever. And that was always a very troubling belief. It actually did mess me up, and still I can be triggered from it by a little bit. But Chris was like, annihilationism is what the Bible says. And my whole world was blown up. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. So people don't exist forever. I had stopped believing in the flames, but I still thought hell is a bad, 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 horrible place, and people are there forever. And then next thing you know, this Chris Date from Rethinking Hell comes along and says, oh yeah, everybody's destroyed in a fire. So here's what I think now. I don't think we know shit. I think if God made the universe, we know more about the universe than we know about God, I think. And we don't know a whole hell of a lot about the universe. So we can even tell if we can't even tell if there's life in other planets, but we put God in like some sort of system. So for me, where I'm at, I would say I do believe and have a childlike faith in the phrase Jesus is Lord. I have fun believing in the Trinity, even though I don't understand it. I have childlike faith that everything's going to be okay. And it even seems that way according to the Bible. I would love to debate somebody as far as like a Christ-centered universalism, because I think even the Bible points to that. And yeah, I guess lastly, I'd say, and I wrote some of this stuff down because I forget stuff, man, I'm getting old. But I believe if the God of the universe is contained by theology or constrained by, like, I can't save people unless they believe a certain thing about God of the universe, infinite God. That's just a really weird God. Real weird God. That's me, man. I would love just to kind of get a snapshot of, and it'll be really funny if you're like, dude, I'm not a Christian and I've never read the Bible. I just want to talk about mushrooms. But I know that's not the case. Give me your background, man.
Well, I think even based on hearing that story, I think we will have a very open and enjoyable, and I don't anticipate a lot of antagonism coming from your end towards me, which is cool. I would say the majority of the podcasts I'm on are, because they're going to be more progressive. So, there's a natural flow, there's an openness, there's an enjoyability, even if people think differently than me.
Right.
But then you will get a handful of like oh, that was actually kind of antagonistic in some beneath the surface ways. Right?
Oh, gotcha. Well, here's what's interesting,
anyways.
and before you get into the story, I'm curious what you think about this though, because I'm trying to work this out, because I actually do want to have, like, I hang out with a lot of evangelicals. A lot of them don't want to come on this show, but I want to have those sorts of conversations with people who believe what I just believed a little while ago, but I'm trying to figure out the art. You don't even have to respond to this, but if you want to, I'm trying to figure out the art of figuring out the tension of pushing back, but not make them feel like they're unwelcomed. Like, I see the podcast as like a living room. Hey, come on into my living room. I want to be up front with you because that's how I am, and that's what my podcasters expect. But I don't want you to be uncomfortable in my living room, and that's a hard thing. It's hard.
And for me, it is that dynamic and the environment that you would like to be able to create for others who think more closely to how you used to think 5, 10, 15 years ago, or whatever it was. It's not primarily what you're saying. It is the way in which you are saying. I don't mean you, I mean in a general you. It is not the things that are being said. It is the energy with which things are being said. It's the medium is the message. Our very bodily presence, our very disposition is the message, is the living room, like you say. So I was on a podcast, one of the ones I was on, not a Christian. This guy's antagonistic in the sense of he's challenging everything I'm saying, but he's fun. His energy's open. It's not a constricting, putting me on the defense, wanting to debate about dumb shit kind of a thing. He's just like, well, I mean, come on though, but the Bible, that's ridiculous. Right. And I'm like, well, and it's like, it's the energy, right? In that case, the medium is the message. Yeah. So,
do you know, I like to tell, when we get to talking about these sorts of things, I like to tell guests on here, we've had the head guy from Westboro Baptist on here twice. And it was interesting deal. And that, for me, I do care about people, even him, but for me, it's almost like some experimental territory. Like, I want to figure out how to have a conversation with the guy, because I actually am, and it may just be curiosity. I want to tell myself that I care also. It may be curiosity, but I want to know why and how this guy got to a point where he really believes this. And quite honest, it was, I think it was eye-opening for me personally. Anyway, typical tangent for Joey Svensson. So you grew up a Christian, I'm assuming, still are, it sounds like.
So here, I'll give you a little backstory. I went to Catholic school 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade.
Dude, stop.
And
I left Catholic school after the 3rd grade. I have to say that. Is that not crazy?
Boom.
You said 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. That's when I left the Catholic church.
Oh, there we go. And in 4th, so this is Los Angeles, area, LA Unified School District. So I leave Catholic school. I go to public school 4th grade. Now we're cussing and we're fighting and it's going down all the time. It's not a big deal. And my 9-year-old self was like, this is salvation. This is where I'm meant to be. Right. This is where the fullness of my young self can blossom. And, soon after, I don't even know when, stopped going to mass. And it wasn't as if I was a 11-year-old kid or whatever saying like, I'm leaving the church.
Right.
I just didn't care. And I was like, I'm over this. I don't know what's really happening. I don't think about it.
Right.
And my parents didn't push that on me. And it's funny, my mom and I had a conversation about this recently. And I said, Mom, I left that experience with what I call a pleasant indifference towards God, life, the church. It was just a non-issue in a sense. I'm thankful
you said
for
pleasant indifference, right? Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Pleasant indifference, because I had zero, and I'm really grateful for this, and it's a big part of my story. No oppositional energy, no antagonism, no issues, no with the church, and also no shame, guilt, or traumatic thoughts from the church. It just wasn't really a thing. And I'm grateful for that, to be honest. That's a big part of the book, is I have a chapter in the book called Mushrooms and Missionaries. And in that chapter, I essentially say that in the same way a missionary would function in a healthy way of pointing someone further towards Christ, mushrooms played that same role for me in my own life from 16, 17 towards 18. Even for your listeners, a little sidebar, when I talk about mushrooms and missionaries, there's a need to temporarily suspend the urgent requirement of disentangling and dismantling that word missionary from all of its white supremacist colonial empire building dominating endeavors that it's caught up in. I'm a part of that. I have my own journey of dismantling that. I hope other people who are interested in the church are also doing that work. But the healthy part of that term...
Wait, the church didn't start in America? Like, we didn't start Christianity? I'm really thrown for a loop. Let's talk about that another time, then.
It depends on what Bible college you went
I thought
to.
for sure the American flag was like the kind of like a Christian flag. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Like, I tell a story in the book where a young Thomas Merton, great mystic, Catholic contemplative monk in the 20th century, in his early awakening stages, he had a conversation with this visiting Hindu monk and priest from India named Mahanambrata Brahmachari.
He's speaking in tongues, folks. He's speaking in tongues.
I did go to a Foursquare Bible college eventually, so I got that in me.
Oh man, we are the same, dude.
And so he goes to this brilliant Hindu monk and asks for guidance. And the monk doesn't tell him to read the Bhagavad Gita, doesn't point him to his own cultural or sacred text. He tells a young Merton to read St. Augustine's Confessions and Thomas à Kempis's Imitation of Christ. And let's say those books get integrated into Merton's journey. He becomes this great monk, Christian, etc. I say, well, in the same way that monk was this unexpected missionary for Jesus or for Christ for Thomas Merton, mushrooms were that missionary for me as a teenager. Where when I started taking them soon after, and at some point in that journey, I kept sensing the mushrooms were saying yes, but keep going. They were a signpost pointing me to the future I couldn't see, to a freedom I desired but wasn't sure existed, and to this truth I hoped for but knew wasn't guaranteed. So eventually, that's in the book as well, of another chapter called More Mushrooms and the Most Important Moment of My Life. And eventually I had this spontaneous, immediate awakening moment with God when I was 18 years old that completely not only re-altered my life, but I would argue rewired my very consciousness itself. So
I want to make sure, I'm almost positive, but I want to make sure for me and our listeners' point of view, when you're saying mushrooms, are you talking about taking natural stuff growing
psilocybin,
for hallucinogenic effects?
Yeah.
For hallucinogenic effects?
Yeah, hallucinogenic, entheogens, psychedelic, psilocybin,
Yeah, and so, so obviously this is a 30-minute conversation. There's just a billion things I want to talk about. Am I hearing you correctly that you're saying you're still a spiritual person? Sounds like even a Christian. You're saying that God used mushrooms to bring you to more understanding of God, more understanding of life itself, a little bit of both. Like, are you saying that God used mushrooms to speak to you?
I'm saying mushrooms were the primary guide for me in terms of my own spiritual journey. When I had no experience with any evangelical culture as a teenager. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know worship music. I didn't know church. I didn't know youth groups. I honestly had never heard of those things. So I wasn't against them. I just didn't know about it. When you have no altar calls, no pastors, no guides, no whatever it is people look to. And I didn't look to my parents to be like that at the time. We just did, even though my family was Catholic, it wasn't like God talk in the house.
Right.
It wasn't like that. And they were great people. But in that sense, mushrooms were that guide for me towards this experience that I had. Now,
can you go into that a little bit, like as far as how they guided you, and if you're going to get there, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I would love to just get some context of how mushrooms guide people and how you have almost a rewiring of your approach to life. I've heard a lot about this. I'd say for me personally, I have only experienced, and you would be able to, I'm sure, give more insight on this, but some of the effects that I think marijuana can do along the lines of some sort of shift in your processing is the only thing that I've experienced. Like I've never done mushrooms or... Well,
I think cannabis technically, I believe, would be considered a very mild hallucinogenic. And by the way, for context now, for people reading, I am a Christian. Now, I could give a long answer of what that means and how people might not want to claim me, but I'm a Christian. My wife and I started a church almost 10 years ago that I've been leading for a decade, which I'm actually in the last chapter of right now. Yes, that's also helping give you some information about where this journey eventually led.
Who suggested mushrooms to you? Was it
nobody
recreational? I'm a bad kid. Yes. I'm going to take some mushrooms sort of thing?
Yes, I'll tell people when I first ate mushrooms at 16, because I did them 10 times, like 16, 17, 18. And when I first did them, it wasn't already, I am on a conscious quest for truth, and I believe these can have this mysterious role in guiding me. It was, no, I'm 16 and I do drugs, and this is the next one I'm going to do. And I've been smoking weed since I was a kid and drinking heavily since I was young. And eventually you start, doing other things. And I probably was already doing other drugs at that point, I think, or as close to it. And I was like, no, this is the next one I'm going to do. Soon after, it started to evolve and morph into something more for me. Yeah. Where when I say that primary thing of the mushrooms were saying to me, or something was saying to me through the mushrooms, yes, but keep going. It was, they would give me a glimpse of truth, of life, of peace, of wisdom, of a sense of knowing, of a deeper interconnectedness, or whatever it was. They would give me a glimpse of something that was real, but I knew the goal was much further ahead. It was like each time I would do it, they would give me just enough energy and excitement to keep moving forward on what was becoming a more conscious quest for truth. They would bless me with just enough of the taste of the possibilities of freedom and peace in my body and in my mind and in my heart that I didn't have, to keep going forward to what I hoped for was a different future. And that's my story, Joey. Was my spiritual journey, the depth of my own pursuit began with a radical sense of self-awareness and a radical inward journey into myself.
Wow.
I didn't have guides. I had that radical inward journey of, even in high school, and connected with this whole pursuit of truth, was it didn't come from someone telling me things are bad in an ethical and moral sense. It came from me starting to recognize the illusions in my own life. I played basketball. I was supposed to play in college. I was doing music as a kid, and I was selling weed. I was living that life. I was like, I have a life people want. I know that. I said, damn it, I'm not at peace. I'm not happy. And I have this inner restlessness that is just haunting me, and I just can't escape it. And seeing through my illusions of, everything I'm doing is actually for the need for approval from others.
Yeah.
Well, that's not freedom. If me playing basketball is actually, I don't really love it. I just need it because my ego needs a sense of validation through it. So my sense of value is contingent upon other people's telling me I'm special. Like, I started seeing that even at that age. Right. And I was like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
The seeing through illusions, the asking of deeper questions, the desire for something more, that's what was driving me. Like, spirituality, religion, God was never a moral and ethical project for me. It was an actual desire for joy and for peace and for freedom.
Dude, I'm matured, and I've got so many ways I need to mature, but I've matured enough to where I have a really healthy jealousy for what you just described. Like, I'm very happy for you, and gosh, awesome. I'd give my right arm, because I grew up in do's and don'ts, and you're probably going to go to hell. And you better do everything you possibly can to make sure that doesn't happen, because once it happens, it's forever.
I have all that. Eventually, you can read it in the book, The Making of a Mystic. There's some deep, it's not an autobiography, but there's autobiographical moments of my life, and even my journey up to the experience, and that awakening moment with God when I was 18 while I was on mushrooms, which was the last time I ever did them. Even that experience was by no stretch of the imagination, much to the chagrin of my mother at the time, who, would have to explain to people whatever her son was doing. People would have not said I was a great person. I was a very a manipulative, objectifying, I just used everybody to get what I want type of a person. Even if I was likable, I still was like that. And so when I have this direct, immediate experience of God, my foundational experience of faith was a universal affirmation of my life. It was a universal yes. It was unconditional love. It was light and love infused into my being there was no sinner's prayer. There was no belief system at hand. There was no assent to any propositional beliefs. It was just pure, direct union. So the foundation of my faith, which is the journey of a mystic, is a direct knowing of the sacred, unmediated by any traditions or beliefs.
And
that's
you,
one way of saying it.
Right. And you would say that revelation, God could have chosen another way, but that revelation wouldn't have come to you outside of the hallucinogenic effects of mushrooms. Like, that's where it came from.
I mean, I mean, they were the guide for my journey. I mean, obviously people don't need psychedelics to actually have a direct experience of the sacred. I don't believe that at all. But for me, that's why I tell people in the book, my journey is not prescriptive. It's just me owning the fullness of my own journey. Yeah. And a big part of that was when I have this direct, spontaneous awakening moment with God. And the reason why I say it was a rewiring and a transformation of consciousness is I remember driving home that night, or actually my parents came to pick me up at 4 a.m. from my girlfriend's house where I ended up after a really bad trip. The story's in the book. And my friend Squirrel was with me. And my girlfriend at the time is now my wife, which is awesome. You know, so it's cool to have that history together. Yeah. I'm in the car going home. And I remember thinking this to myself. So I'm 18 at the time. And I said, it's not that I'm having different thoughts about life, although I am. It's the very I that is doing the thinking has been foundationally transformed.
Right.
That is a transformation of consciousness. It is not just changing your beliefs. You can change your beliefs and remain the same person, essentially. Yeah. It wasn't changing my beliefs. It was the very I, the very space within which those beliefs are arising has been completely exploded, undone, and reborn. That is transformation. That is a transformation of consciousness. Yeah. I never did psychedelics again.
That you did mushrooms 10 times. Didn't you say 10 times through the course of 3 years?
Yes.
And then you stopped?
16. Yeah. Because those were the signs pointing me beyond themselves to the source. So if you look at the new age, sort of like more new agey crowd, and that's not I'm not saying that in a pejorative way right now, but just, sort of pursuing spirituality outside of whatever conventional church or whatever. Alan Watts is like one of their guys, right? Brilliant guy, sort of introduced Western Buddhism mindfulness to people at large culturally in the 20th century. And he has this really well-known quote that people love to quote. And he says, when he's talking about psychedelics, he says, psychedelic experience is only a glimpse of genuine mystical insight. And he goes on to say, when you get the message, hang up the phone. For psychedelic drugs are simply instruments like microscopes, telescopes, and telephones. Now, hang up the phone of when you get the like if I call you and tell you the good news, the point now is not to call Kevin again and have me explain the good news to you every single day. It's for you to actually embody, live that out, and become that yourself.
Yeah.
If you've seen the vision through the microscope, you don't need the microscope anymore. The point is to now act upon that and become that integrated, etc. And so for me, at 18, I said, I know the mushrooms were saying yes, but keep going towards that which is ultimate reality, etc. Once I have that, the point of my life now is not to go back to the signs. Let's say the mushrooms are the directions to the ocean. The ocean is God, truth, love, grace, etc. My life now is not going back to the directions. It is learning to live, swim, trust, and one might say become the ocean itself. And I'll tell you this, let's say even a few months later when a part of me thinks, man, I want to do mushrooms again. Because besides that, you just love them. You know, the euphoria, the visuals, like I'm tripping out when I'm doing them. It's not like this is truth. I'm like, yeah, and we're also, we're also tripping. And a part of me might have thought, oh, I want to go back and do it again because it's such an intense experience. And even at that age, I thought to go back to those would be to betray that which I experienced in the fullness.
Dang, man. And dude,
I have been being called by that. And once I am embraced by this absolute embrace and universal acceptance and love, which I at that point would have named as God, and I still do, to go back would be to betray the truth and power and to say that isn't enough when I knew my life was becoming that, surrendering to it and giving my whole life to it after that.
Dude,
and that's what I did.
How powerful of an experience did that have to be for it to be so euphoric, but so powerful that you have the discipline to say, I ain't messing that up. Like, that's crazy because it seems like most people were like, I got to do that again. It was just so freeing. And you're saying, no, it was so clear though.
Well, there's a funny story I tell in the book about, these group of kids all do LSD, take acid. When people will say similar experiences as what I'm describing on psilocybin too. So, friends take acid the next morning. The friend's like, dude, last night I discovered the meaning of life. And all their friends are all like waiting. Like, whoa, like, dude, no way. What is it? And then right when they're all getting ready to hear the good news, and the guy was like, I forgot. And then they all, because that happens a lot.
Right.
And I'm like, that to me is a funny story about how a spiritual experience doesn't always translate into a spiritual life. But to me, I'm like, that's the point of peak experiences and why oftentimes our church camp moment. No, I went to Burning Man and ate a bunch of mushrooms. No, I'm going to Coachella to do Molly with my friends. No, I went to another big worship conference, which to me all can be very similar ways of how they function psychologically for us. What we see on the peak needs to become who we are on the path. The vision we get when we're there, which is cool, needs to actually be alchemized, and I don't even know if that's a word, and transformed into the values that are actually a part of who we are. And that's why I say the real work of transformation and the further journey toward freedom does not happen during the psychedelic trip or the massive God moment. It always happens after. Are you becoming that? Are you just going to return? Let me go to another conference. Let me eat more mushrooms because it's a guaranteed intense emotional experience. Or are you going to have the discipline, like you said, to, oh no, what you really need is a practice of 20 minutes in silence 4 to 5 days a week to start to become that and trust that more and more.
Yeah.
But who wants to sit in silence? You know, you have a million things to do when you can just go back and pay $500 for a conference or whatever.
So that's interesting. Do you, and you don't sound like the judgmental person, so I don't think it'd be like looking down your nose at someone, but do you see someone who smokes weed regularly or goes on trips with mushrooms regularly? Do you think, oh man, there's something in their life that's missing because they wouldn't do that all the time? Like how do you see people that just regularly trip on hallucinogens and it's just a part of their life?
Even though I'm a pastor and I have been, like, just think about the uniqueness of my own story.
Right.
There are many, many unique paths towards God and life and truth and joy and freedom and peace and the things that I believe we all really desire. And I'm quite comfortable being present to people wherever they are and however they're going about doing that right now. I'm a guide. That's what I love to do. The pastoral part of me, the substance of it, besides any position, is I feel like the spiritual teacher is oftentimes an alarm clock inviting people to wake up. And also the pastor is the one who commits to be close and present insofar as people allow you to be a guide on that journey. That's an amazing thing. And I really take that seriously. And I love it, that part of my life. And I love that. That's just what I do. And so I don't have judgment towards people, whether they're doing that through what people would see as conventional ways of being plugged in at a church, or if people are taking these other alternative paths. I will connect with people wherever they are and offer them guidance and a loving presence and pointing them towards the next couple steps if that's what they want in any way. And not everyone's going to just do that regular. I'm going to go into it. I'm not trying to be mean, but like, they're not going to do the regular church way. And I'm comfortable with people who do that, you know, and I'm also really comfortable with people who I just know they're never going to do that. The president of Fuller, which is where I went to grad school, Fuller Seminary, like 10 years ago or whatever, Mark Laberton, he said this thing that always stuck with me. He said, not everybody wants a pastor, but everybody needs pastoral guidance. And I think that's really important because a lot of people I know personally and people are not ever going to be a part of a local church. They're just not. And I'm not like spending my life trying to get them to. Mm-hmm. But the pastoral guidance of, the desire for wisdom, the desire to feel heard and seen, and perhaps some clarity on the next step and affirmation of where they're at. Man, I want to do that for everybody where they are. And I accept that that's going to look so many different unique ways. And I just love being a part of wherever that is.
Right. That's cool, man. Yeah. I think both of us know a lot of people that would fall in this line of thinking, and we probably respect most of them too. But here's how the dots are connected theologically to say, no. Sweeney's full of shit. Like, don't listen to him. You can't do this sort of thing. Because what people do is they say, well, the Bible specifically says no drunkenness. And what that means is you can't be in an altered state of mind. And so I've heard people say, I don't think you can smoke weed without having an altered state of mind. It's not like you can take a sip of weed, whereas you can take a sip of wine. But basically, if you take one thing of weed, you're going to be high, and that's on the same playing field as drunk. Obviously, hallucinogens would be even a more extreme example of that how would you handle that very, I would imagine, reductionist point of view of substances and altering mind states because of that one, or few passages that say drunkenness is wrong?
Yeah, one I'm just like, I know my own experience. Without guides and without people affirming it from the outside, my spirituality began by trusting my own sense of knowing. And that doesn't mean epistemological certainty. It means a bodily, heart, mind aligned, resonating, knowing like I might be losing my mind before I experience God. And I thought I'm like 17 or 18, like thinking I'm getting close to experiencing the truth of the universe. And I just sense that or I'm isolating, eating a lot of mushrooms, smoking a blunt by myself in the car right now and starting to become unhinged, maybe. But at a deeper level, I know what's happening. And even when I experienced God, I had no external sources to be like, that was a legitimate experience of the divine. Right. I was like, I don't need anybody I know what happened. What's fascinating about the Bible is later on, I would hear stories like when they're like, Paul has this profound experience. He consulted no one, spent this moment alone, and then came out as this revolutionary, whatever. I'm like, yeah, cool. That shit makes sense to me. Cause that's basically, he got knocked down. I got whatever. I was like, but yeah. I would resonate with stories like that. Or even when Proverbs is saying, some of the first Bible stuff I read was, Proverbs searching for wisdom as if it's jewelry, basically, and finding it. I'm like, that's what I did. I gave my life to pursue wisdom. So anyways, back to your question. One, I just don't care because I know my own experience. And what you see in encounter with the divine, the fruit is the evidence. If this person's more loving, compassionate, open, freed, less neurotic, less rigid, more empathetic, that's always the fruit of spirit. I don't give a shit how a person got there. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Whether it was a ritual from another religious tradition, going to a church service, just sitting in silence, looking at the trees and be like, roots are deep and I want to go deep somehow, and that makes a connection for you. Cool. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah. It seems like with what you're saying and what you experience, you would have lightheartedly no problem with saying everybody should try it at least once, because maybe you're wired up in a way where this could be very beneficial. I have a friend of mine who says everybody should do it once, even taking the risk of a bad trip. And oh my gosh, his story of his bad trip is just fantastic.
I end one of these chapters in this playful way of saying, it's kind of describing my unique and funny form of ambivalence towards the reemergence of all of the energy around psychedelics and microdosing and ketamine therapy and everything, which I understand, and it makes sense to me. I wouldn't say that because I don't prescribe it for anybody. Let's say if there's like a young person who's like, should I? I'm not going to say whether you should or you shouldn't, but if a person chooses to and they want guidance and conversations, I'm here. But it's not a prescriptive way, because the truth is the majority of people I did psychedelics with are not leading voices of compassion. They're not spiritual gurus. They're not the leading activists for justice. Because when you grow up doing drugs the way I did, you always have that part of you that's like, but for most people, they just want an experience and they just want to get high and they just want to do that. And okay, but that's not the same as a radical transformation. So I have an ambivalence of like, would I say they're completely evil? Of course not. I'm saying they were a guide for me. Do I have the same, I think, overly romantic notion of psilocybin and all these things are going to revolutionize society like they thought in the 60s? No, the 60s cultural revolution didn't lead us to utopia like a lot of those people thought. So I'm like, hey, it's this, it's that. A lot of times it's just this, but it also has these great effects. For some people, there's research here that's positive. There's also people, I'm ambivalent, but I'm here for people who are going through that and just looking for guidance, just in general.
Yeah. And it gets so tricky, and sometimes you just have to stand back and marvel at all the rules that we just make up. And I did the same sort of stuff with religion. But when I went through that really dark time in 2019, I got a ketamine treatment twice, and it was an extremely wonderful experience. But unfortunately, I was just so far gone that the effects or the benefits only lasted within the effects, and once they were gone. But no one batted an eye if I were to say, hey, I went to an actual medical facility that they're experimenting with ketamine. There's been some research. Nobody thought anything, but if it was, hey, I'm trying mushrooms to help with my depression, they'd be like, oh, well, that's not medical. That's you're off the tracks there. And I just think that's interesting. I'll throw this one out there. How many people say, well, marijuana is not bad, but you really shouldn't do it in South Carolina because it's illegal, and they drive 10 over the speed limit everywhere they go?
I believe Buddhists, and Rohr draws upon this too, and Richard Rohr would say, spiritual practices are fingers pointing to the moon. So the fingers aren't the point, they're doing the pointing, rituals, things, songs we sing, prayers, whatever. And deep within all of that, and this is why I have compassion and love and the ability to be present to people wherever they are, is just a desire for more. We desire to be at peace. We desire joy. We desire connection. Everybody wants that. And I want that for everybody. I have no matter how much you disagree with the ways in which the fingers they're using to point to the moon, like, to me, that isn't the point. I just recognize that universal drive that drove me and that I want for people. Like, the subtitle of the book for people listening, it's The Making of a Mystic, My Journey with Mushrooms, My Life as a Pastor, and Why It's Okay for Everyone to Relax. And a part of the relaxing part is, man, everybody's just doing their best.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean you don't disagree with people. And it doesn't mean you don't talk your shit when it comes to that prophetic fire of truth telling and calling out injustice. You do all that stuff. But at the same time, there's this common humanity of, even at people's worst, deep down, there's an inner logic of that's actually them trying their best, as misguided and destructive as it is. Deep down, I think we all want the same things. And I can totally disagree and see someone as dangerous, toxic, or problematic and still know and humanize them and know they want the same things I want. And that's why I have that universal compassion for everybody, because I'm like, we all want life. And and to me, that's one of the reasons, like, that's why I'm a Christian, because this is the path that leads us to life. Like, I don't really think about hell. Like, when we were talking about earlier, I don't think about heaven in the sense of like what happens after. I don't know. No one knows with certainty what's going to happen. I'm like, the joy, the connection, all those things there's an increasing ability to experience that here. And that's what I'm here for, is to enjoy that myself and to hopefully guide some others towards that.
Man, I can't resonate with you more. That's one of the big themes around these parts is I think of, how would you feel if you could go back in time and I'm not going to qualify this. I'm going to let this just linger, and because it'll make me feel uncomfortable in saying, but imagine holding newborn Osama bin Laden, like going back in time and holding that baby, knowing what's going to happen in the future. You'd be like, okay, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen to this baby before he gets to the point of where he is. And he was brainwashed. He was trained for this. And just remembering, I mean, all of our starting point, I used to think we're all born into sin. I believe we're born pretty pure and we're pretty polluted right away. But hey, I'll let Brian McLaren close us out. He's a friend of this show, been on multiple times, and he says, you may never have considered yourself a mystic, but in these pages you'll find resonance with some of your own deepest hopes, longings, and intuitions. I appreciate your time, man. I'm looking forward to reading this book.
Yeah, Joe, I appreciate it, man. Good stuff, man. Like I said, the not anticipating antagonisms, but one, I just want to say, as a first-time author, for anybody with any show to take the risk or extend the hospitality to bring me on, I do not take that for granted. I'm really grateful for this time. And yes, that means the next times my other books are coming out, which I got some on the way, I will. I'm going to reach out and initiate and be like, I'm coming on again, dude. And we're going to talk some more.
There you go. And
the book, The Making of a Mystic, May 31st. My Instagram at Kevin Sweeney 1 is probably like the best way to stay in touch day to day and see what's happening. And then just my own podcast, The Church Needs Therapy.
I'm going to have to tune into that.
Yeah.
The devil, I'm dancing. Tonight I'm taking chances. Ain't real with romancing. accepting your advances, not trying to take advantage. Go with the flow, baby, we don't plan shit, no.